Yeah.
Yeah,
Right now it's,
to be honest with
here we go, now it's on you guys.
I'm not quite sure. I think I saw some glossy buckthorn and some
So,
other
we're
stuff.
on?
So I think it's a mix.
Yeah, sometimes I guess you just need to shut it off and turn it on, turn it on.
Well,
I was getting ready
That's
to,
like the magic, I guess.
I was getting ready to boot it for you.
I always joke I'm just gonna punt my equipment sometimes when it's not doing what I want it to. Alright, but we should be good. Sorry for that.
All good.
We're gonna start now?
Yeah.
Rock and roll.
Okay, this is the September 16th, 2020 meeting of the Laconia Conservation Commission. I'm Dean Anson.
Deb Williams.
Lisa Moran.
Wesley Bates.
Marnie Schultz.
Michael Flick.
Ashley Ruprecht.
Okay, so we're gonna start off by pledging allegiance to the flag. Pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Okay, so we started at 6:17 because we had some technical difficulties, so anyway. Okay, so the first item on the agenda is acceptance of the minutes from September 2nd.
I move we accept the minutes of September 2nd as presented.
I'll second that.
Okay, anybody have any comments? Okay, any comments? Okay, so we have a motion on the floor. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, thank you. Okay, we're gonna change the order of activities here. We'll postpone working on 126 Clinton Street Water Main Replacement, CUP. And we'll go to the proposed changes to the ordinance. Actually, you want to tell everybody what the purpose of the changes?
Yeah, sure.
Please.
So, I've been tasked with going through and just trying to spruce things up, make them more clear, iron out some inconsistencies. I did add several definitions here, just to clarify. Currently, the ordinance says that a certified soil scientist needs to delineate a wetland. I don't know if it's because when it was perhaps first instituted, maybe wetland scientist wasn't a certification, and soil scientist was, but I think it's time we update that.
Yep.
I mean, unless you want me to go through the nitty gritty, Dean, I guess the main things are, I did, in section E, so now it says wetland, water body, and vernal pool buffers. This is two existing sections now combined into one, because currently it's wetland and vernal pool and then water bodies, and both of them state brooks, like the named brooks plus the unnamed brooks, and and the maintaining of the buffers, all the verbiage is essentially the same of leaving the buffer natural. And I just found that it was, and more so from when I first started working here, it was kind of confusing to me about why it's stated in two separate spots. So it's more of a combination effort, so I combined both of those sections into one, and then made a table
Yep.
that, more precisely points out what the resource is and what the setback is. So it's more of a quick glance. I did add a section, so section D, the verification of wetland boundaries, this is totally new. So anything in bold is new. Anything crossed out is something I'm getting rid of, just for clarification on that. So verification of wetland boundaries, in case there's any sort of inconsistency of whether or not it should be included, or maybe, I don't know, there's some distrust or something with the way that the wetland's been mapped. Like, well, I've been there personally, and I think that might have not been mapped correctly. So this kind of sets up how that would be addressed. So it would go before planning board and conservation commission, and it would need to be, the wetland determination would need to be done by a certified wetland scientist, and that cost would be subject to the applicant, so the city wouldn't pay for that if there was some sort of discrepancy.
Yep.
So, where did you get your definitions from? Were they either existing or did you pull them from source
So,
material?
Most of them are from the state, so the impervious surface, the intermittent and perennial streams are state definitions. They actually didn't have a state definition for pervious surface, so I kinda pulled one together from, what I could find. Certified wetland scientist, I believe I pulled that. Several other municipalities have definitions for that, and so, actually,
You have it in the RSA, I mean, I think.
so we have it for a certified soil scientist right now, but we don't have it for wetland scientist. So I pulled it and just said as defined in RSA 310A84.
Yep.
So that's where those came from. The only one that was a little more, not already defined, I guess, was the pervious surface. And so what these definitions now do, currently the city does not see a patio or, gravel, like driveways, as being impervious. They see them as being pervious, which this now outlines that unless it's explicitly designed to be pervious, impermeable, then we're gonna say it's not. So if someone wants to put it, unless they can say that it's designed, so if they are building a patio and their patio pavers are, say, like spaced, so that way water infiltrates, or maybe the paver blocks that they're using have the ability to infiltrate, then that would be classified as now being pervious versus impervious.
Say it again. How about the
So
cross
it's-
blocks? How about the cross blocks on their patio? Is that it, pervious?
I would say if water has the ability to infiltrate down,
Yep.
not just run off, and they can, and it is kind of leaving it more up to the applicant to prove that it's designed to be permeable. It's not necessarily the city or your guys' job to look at it and be like, this spec is incorrect, although I'm sure you could point it out potentially, and definitely ask the question about it, but it's the applicant's job to now say, okay, I'm doing this work and it's designed, and you'll see it a lot with DES applications, if they're along the shoreline, they're within 50 feet, they need to be permeable, and they will explicitly say on their plans, walkways are permeable. So they need to prove that, and if they decide not to, that they say, yeah, it is, and then next thing you know, you see sheets of runoff causing all sort of issues, and it turns out not to be, then you're gonna have an issue.
So I have some questions too here in section E. In number 1B, where you've eliminated unnamed brooks designated A through I on the official zoning map, not knowing where A through I on the official zoning map is, but I wondered if those were identified simply because that might be a more sensitive area. And so that's why they were explicitly identified as an unnamed brooks, because they wanted those included in there, and taking them out all of a sudden makes them more vulnerable. And then the other thing you have in E, the streams are shown on and will correspond to the latest version of the United States Geological Survey map. I'm wondering if that had been put in there because the USGS is probably the legal person the legal entity you point to for verification of an intermittent perennial stream. I'm just saying, you know, it's like, you know, I kind of, not that I don't trust that a lot of this is just fine, but I also wonder when you start eliminating stuff, was there a reason it was put in the way it was, and are we just?
So if I could first, so section B, this says the boundary of any wetland or brook contiguous to public waters and including the following named brooks. Getting rid of the end part there that says unnamed brooks, A through I, which I initially got rid of because I could not find A through I designated streams if my life depended on it. For some reason, there was just no, I couldn't figure out the rationale, like.
I know them.
So, I think, so Dean has a map on his wall, and someone had taken a crayon and wrote A through H. I don't know where I is. And even more recently, they have reappeared on the zoning map. So once a year, CAI Technologies, who does our assessing database, gives us one free map, updated map, because properties get subdivided and merged and whatever. So they gave us a map, and it only recently made its way to our office, I guess, this past week. It's dated April 2020, and now they have the designated streams A through H. Again, I don't know where I is. I have looked at this map up and down. So perhaps we just
Where are they, Mike?
clarify it. They're mostly,
A starts from the north side of Watson Road. And it's in there, if I remember that correctly. And then there's, I can't remember all the rest of them, but I know some of it's on my property.
yeah.
So,
One of them goes to Foots Pond,
Yep.
and then there's Curly Pond, and then, I mean, they're all contiguous to public waters. So that's why, I just, coming into it, it wasn't on any of the zoning maps that I had.
well, it is now,
It is now.
so let's leave it in there.
Okay, so, and I'm gonna change it to A through H, because like I said, unless we can find an
Find the
I,
I again.
as of right now, A through H.
Interesting.
Where's H? Do we know?
So the way that they designated them on this map, they started at the top of the city and
The
worked south. So I'm staring at H and I'm like, where is I?
It doesn't,
I can't.
I don't know that it matters if you can't find it or not. I think we should just leave it, because I may come up, I may show up at some point and it may be important.
I don't think it will show up because it doesn't exist on the map. It's highlighted and, I mean, I'll leave it up to you, Dean.
Okay, so the suggestion I made was, I made two suggestions. One was, because I was one of the people who, Ashley and Dean and I sat down and went through these changes.
Your eye.
And,
The other Dean.
yeah. Big Dean and I sat down and did this. And I thought maybe Diane Hanley would know, so I called her. She didn't know. So the other thing I suggested to Ashley was that we get a topographical map, a detailed topographical map of the city, and look, and now we have those, you know, those A through H, we can look and see what they did, and maybe we can find I, because I is probably the furthest south,
Yeah.
and,
I
you know.
think that's still reasonable, I can still take time to go through and do that. If I can't find it, do we just leave I regardless?
I would, it doesn't hurt anything to
Yeah,
leave it.
but, you know, there's something to leaving stuff in there if it's not identified, you know?
But it could be. It
Well,
could
yeah,
be.
what-
I'd
what
say,
would-
Well-
I'd say, if-
What would be the downside to having something in there that's unidentified?
well, where's Jay?
There isn't
Well,
one.
Jay's not being listed.
I guess my apprehension to not including it was if we don't know it's there, how would we be able to enforce it? So
Right.
The reason of leaving it there is because the buffer, if it's not 75 feet, because it's not contiguous to a public water body, one of the named brooks, or designated A through I, the buffer is then 30 feet.
Yeah.
But if I don't know, if it was contiguous to a public water body, which I would know during reviewing, it would have the 75-foot buffer. And if it's not, so I guess
It could
I
be,
can't enforce it if I don't know it exists.
it
But
could be
I-
up near me, though. It could be some of the streams that dry up
It-
in the summer. There's two, like, right on my block that run behind houses.
I just feel like somebody at one point in time thought that that was important to include, and that just cutting it out, like, potentially takes away from something that somebody worked to make happen.
And if it accidentally happens that the buffer is not enforced, then that can be dealt with. I mean, as a, you know, it's not, you're not, I don't think the city's gonna get a big fine for.
Okay, so one of the things that happened is, when we went to the city council, planning board, then to the city council, to make changes to the wetland buffers, the city council and the planning board approved our recommendations. But this item B was dropped out, accidentally dropped out.
Yeah,
So when I went to the city council and told them that we wanted to add this back in, the reason that I told them I wanted, the primary reason, was that these smaller streams are connected to our drinking water source. And if we don't take care of the quality of the water in those streams, then we're going to influence our drinking water source. So they agreed with that approach, and so I think what we do is leave A through I in, and then see if we can't get a topographical map and identify the I. But, and I want to talk about this later, and all I want to do later is just sow a seed. Given what's going on in California, and Oregon, and Washington, and what's going on down south with the rain, we need to start looking at climate change and what we can do as a city to start to prepare for climate change, because it's here. And if one of the things we do is identify these smaller water bodies as a way to protect them, so that if we get, you know,
It protects us too.
right, Alabama is getting, you know, some places in Alabama are getting 30 inches of rain today. 30 inches of rain. Imagine if we had 30 inches of rain. This is the Lakes region. I mean, we would fill the lakes for sure. But
There's
no, we
room.
would have flooding, and we need to be able to protect these streams so that the water flows in a methodical, I don't know, manner.
Okay, so I made a note to leave that.
Okay.
piece, and then to address E about how I did remove the part about the latest version on USGS.
Just-
The reason I took that out of there was just because it's the applicant's responsibility to prove that what kind of stream it is. It's not, and so however they get that information, whether it's granite, NH granite, or USGS,
If you have to go to court, you want it USGS. Because I was told that, anyway, and I'm not trying to, Dean, it's up to you, but, I was involved in something when I was on the planning board in Guilford, that it came down to what is that on the USGS map?
Okay,
So,
okay.
Good.
That makes sense, that's, that's a legitimate reason for leaving it in then.
So if someone were to have a project and they approached you and they were taking their data from New Hampshire Granite, you would not accept it?
well, if Granite got it from USGS, then, I'm just saying,
That's
USGS,
UNH,
no, I know it is, but I'm just saying, I mean, USGS won't come to court with you, behind you, and say, we stand by our maps, but that seems to be, at least it had been. And I don't know where Granite gets their information. I know the Granite soils information is different than the NRCS soils information sometimes, which is the official soils information for the United States. So that's why I'm just saying.
Wow. So all right, so let's leave that sentence in E. And let's get the USGS survey map, and let's get Granite, and compare the two, and see how similar they are.
that's a lot of data.
That's a lot of
I would-
data, that's,
I would just ask Granite where they're sourcing their information
Maybe
from.
we can ask Granite how closely their data tracks with USGS.
Yeah. I mean, that, but if,
Hmm?
I-
I don't think that'd work.
And
anyways.
30 feet of the top of bank of both sides of the intermittent and perennial streams.
They may not want to give their sources.
yeah.
Because their stone wall stuff is all user input, a lot of it, along with their LIDAR.
Yeah, so if it's citizen science, we don't want to.
Okay, so let's do this, so we don't prolong this discussion without any more information. Let's leave it in for now, and let's get the USGS map, because those are just the quad sheets. We can look at those. And maybe we can expand it and say streams shown on either
Well,
Granite or,
I think if that's the way it's been and we haven't any issues with it, let's just leave it.
Yep.
yeah, and
okay.
I would argue with that, Dean, because if Granite is citizen science, then, there could be an argument to be had down the road if something comes up and it's not correct information on Granite.
Okay, all right, so let's leave E the way it was.
But I appreciate, Ashley, that you did this. I know it's not easy to go through some old
Yes.
document and figure it out. Okay, I just
What-
lost me.
What is the idea for crossing out number 2, the wetland buffer
So
maintenance?
I only crossed out, all the verbiage is the same, I just crossed out that it's specifically saying wetland buffer, and like I had said before, where there were 2 sections that were essentially very similar in what they were discussing, the water bodies and wetlands, vernal pools and their buffers, and that's why it's now encompassed in this one section, so I wanted to be more broad and just say buffers shall be retained rather than saying wetland buffers, because this subsection is now underneath wetland, water body, vernal pool. So, it means the same thing, it's just talking about all 3 resources instead of one.
And this is a document that an applicant coming to us would have to read this and understand what we were trying to give them as, a way to be consistent with our rules and regulations. So I think it reads better.
And I did add so disturbing the buffer without prior permit approval is subject to the violations and penalties for that section 23582 is the end of the zoning ordinance. It talks about eventually those penalties and fines are decided in court, and there's a fee established with that, but ultimately it would need to go to court and then decided on. Fortunately, there's no ticket I can hand out, but it's a good place to start.
I have one question here, the, H is the, the new number one actually capturing everything the old number one had? And I'm looking at the removal of vegetation, the recontouring and or grading of the land and placement of impervious surfaces does not address the removal of soils, which I think, I mean, maybe if you just say the removal of vegetation and or soils.
You said you're on H?
H,
H1.
H1, it's just above 235-19 shoreland protection.
And what was the question? Sorry, it took me a minute
It
to
doesn't,
find-
it's okay, I just don't think, I think that the revised number one should include the removal of vegetation and or soils, because the revised number one doesn't, the contouring and grading of the land, I mean, you know what I'm trying to say? Somebody could go in there with a backhoe and take off all the topsoil and sell it. You know, if you don't put that in, that the removal of vegetation or soils, I mean, that's the,
So it should be the removal of vegetation and soils.
and or soils.
And or soils, the recontouring or grading of the land, or the placement of impervious surfaces.
I would feel better, but I'm not the only one here, so.
Yeah, I think that makes sense.
Okay. Yeah, I definitely wanted to, since we now talk more about the impervious, pervious surfaces, I kind of wanted to just make it a little more clear that if someone's placing something impervious,
Mhm,
that they would require a conditional use permit.
mhm.
Okay, so I'll amend that.
Thank you.
I tried to think of things that I'm, consistently kind of running into where I get a little frustrated because maybe DES covers it and it's something that they could enforce, but they're, far and few, and they have a lot of things to cover, so. And they're not always, boots on the ground, able to see everything. And we may not have an ordinance now, so that's why the dumping and construction, dumping and burial of construction and demolition debris, that is something that I have, seen and I've had to report to DES, but I haven't been able to actually do anything other than that. And so I wanted to include it.
I want to applaud you on the portable toilets must be 33 feet from all wetlands and water bodies.
I'm sure that, planning board is gonna be like, why 33 feet? But, that, obviously that designation is the New Hampshire DES
Yeah.
regulation, so I want to take things that they have been doing that we could implement as well.
Sure.
That was definitely one of them. Most of these edits, as you'll notice, are within the wetland side of things rather than the shoreline, so if there are things that you think are missing or should be added or changed, like, feel free to speak out. I was just going off of, like I said, things that I've kind of commonly run into and wanted to make more clear, for residents, that way there's not really a dispute.
I guess I have, so under 235-19, we have a 20 and a 21. Does that mean there's a 1 to 19?
Yes, there are.
Okay,
So
okay.
the-
So
yeah,
you only put in the parts that you changed,
Right,
either by adding or subtracting.
yeah, because, and I gave you copies, there's.
Right, and
The
I-
entire ordinance, both of them are 3 pages each, so in order to just make it concise for your guys' review, for the planning board review, I wanted to summarize it and not make you have to piece out and highlight and find what is being changed, so. That's
Okay.
why the entire ordinance is not in here. If you wanna reference it, Dean does have some copies, but if it's not in here, it's not being touched, it is remaining.
So I guess the question I have is, and I know this is live free or die state, but what's the penalty for putting your portable toilet within 33 feet? What's the penalty?
From DES currently,
From the shoreline protection, yeah, what's the penalty?
I actually don't know. I think with most environmental ordinances, the first step is working with the person. If they're not going to cooperate and they're not gonna move and they say, I love my porta potty 10 feet from the water, and I will live and die on that hill. Then I think, I don't know what DES's repercussions are. They probably go the legal route and have a trail of all these violations, and hopefully it doesn't end into water contamination, but if they have that ammunition, they take it to court, and then they fight, and then the
Okay.
judge
Okay,
imposes, and I don't know if DES has the power to, they might in their reg say this fine is associated with this, and they're able to fine them directly, but for the city, typically, we have to get it to the court level, and the judge has to make the ruling on what the fine is for the property owner on any of our zoning regs. So,
okay.
can't issue tickets for porta potties.
He wants to
Can
ticket
you
the
imagine
city.
that? The porta potty
No,
noise?
no, it's, I'm more familiar with what happens in New York State. You know, New York State, they will fine you, they'll shut you down, and, you know, they'll make you put it back the way it was supposed to be. And, you know, we're more lenient than that, it appears to me anyway, more lenient. Okay, so can we do this? Can you email this to everybody with the few changes that we just made, so that everybody can take a look at it, and then email a separate document with the entire ordinance, so that if somebody wants to see what 1 to 19 is in section 235-19, then
Okay.
they can?
Just to be clear though, you're not asking me to incorporate this with the full ordinance though?
No,
are you?
no.
Because that's asking kind of a lot.
No.
Because unfortunately, the way the ordinance is accessed online, I can print it easily, and I can actually get it to a PDF, but I'm not able to edit it, probably for very good reasons. So if I was to get the whole ordinance, I would have to hand type the entire thing to like show you where my changes are with the, okay. But I can attach it as current and include it and include this, and you can go back
Okay,
and
so-
forth and see.
So these are, I can just, no, there are 3 of them, so I can give anybody who wants a paper copy. I have 3 copies of 235-17 and 235-19. So anybody wants a paper copy, I have 3. They go to the highest bidders. Okay. Thank you, Ashley, for doing that. That was,
Are there any other bits that you want clarification on?
no, but I think if we could, everybody get these changes, and then the next meeting, we ask if anybody has any questions.
The goal is to get this before planning board for their November meeting.
Okay.
And speaking of that November meeting, and I don't know if you want me to talk about this later, but our meeting is scheduled for November 4th. And the planning board meetings, because of voting, is also scheduled for November 4th.
Let's bump them.
So before I forget about that, do we want, and I know we've only been having meetings if we have an application, but I guess rather than banking on not having an application and not having a meeting that week, do we want to preemptively push it, or?
So when do they have to have these recommended changes? Like a week before their meeting, or?
Yeah, I need to get them to Kalina to get it on the agenda.
Mm-hmm.
So if we could have everyone review it in October, and then I'll get it
So, we-
to her for the November meeting.
so if we had a meeting instead of that first week in November, the last week in October, does that work for everybody?
Well, okay, so we currently do have scheduled meetings the 7th and the 21st.
Let's make it the 7th and the, well, we can make it the 7th and the 21st.
Yeah, let's leave it, let's leave it.
But then, so in November on the 4th, do we want to
We're-
move it to the 11th and the, no, it's Thanksgiving week, the next week, but.
The 11th is
A holiday.
Veterans
Oh, yeah,
Day
you're right.
technically, but.
Yeah.
Right,
it's
so haven't we met in just a different room?
Yes.
We can meet at 200B, if you want to do that.
I-
It's going to be a lot of hand cramping for me, but,
Hand cramping?
yeah.
Why's that?
Because he
No.
doesn't
'Cause there's
have to
no-
look up.
No recording.
I know, but can't you just,
I know, it's fine. I'm just being a baby about it.
Yeah, it sounds like a you problem, Ashley.
It is
No,
a me
really.
problem,
Yeah.
Wes. It's fine. We can meet in 200B, that's not an issue. It is a little smaller, so I don't know how everyone's comfort level is with sitting a
The
little
six, the
closer.
distancing, yeah.
It's a little harder to achieve in that room.
True. Well, there's the benches on the side too.
Yeah,
That's
I
true.
don't think, yeah, too worried about it,
Okay, so you want to leave it for the 4th,
yeah.
okay, good.
and we'll just do 200B.
Okay. Okay, so we done with that item, ordinance updates? Okay. Okay, so then Ashley has listed the 3 applications that I signed off on since the last meeting. 958 Union Avenue, 133 Pendleton, and 798 Weirs Boulevard. So if you want to look at those, they're,
It's not, sound pretty straightforward, it's a replace in kind or the sand on the beach, so.
Right. does anybody have any questions about any of those 3? No questions?
No. It seems straightforward.
No questions. Okay. Then the next item is under old business, and that's the checklist, Conservation Commission checklist.
Mr. Chair, can I propose that, since we have a few minutes, maybe till Mr. Powell shows up, maybe we skip to something like liaison and subcommittee reports or staff reports that might not take as much time as old business, and get those out of the way while we're waiting for Mr. Powell?
Sure. Okay. All right, so let's do item 8 then. Liaison and subcommittee reports.
Well, Stacy's not here, but I'd be happy to do 9, which is the staff report.
I'll just say for number 8, for number 8, I was on a Zoom call with Gavin McDonald, who's with Genuine Local, and, because I had brought this up before, that I wasn't sure about the timing now, if that was going to work out for the Belknap Food Shed at the old state school property. And it's not off the table with them, so that's all I'll say, is that we were concerned that it was taking too long.
Thank you for that update.
Yeah.
Okay. Number 9, that was a Beatles song. Number 9, number 9. Number 9.
So I don't really have too much more. I've been kind of pounding away at that ordinance change and make sure the rules of procedure. The Heritage Commission is gonna be hopefully molding their rules of procedure off of what we've been working on. But I guess, and this is not related, it is semi-related to Laconia, but it's not official yet, but I am joining the Canterbury Conservation Commission. So I'm looking forward to working with them and see, they have a lot of conservation land. Don't know the total acreage, but a lot. And, I think it'll be useful too to see what they've been doing and what we're doing and kind of compare and contrast and hopefully bring some new info to the table. I have a lot to learn. A lot of people there have been there for 30
Eons.
years, 50 years, yeah. So. it's
When do they
exciting.
meet?
And it works out too, because it's on Mondays.
Oh, good.
Hey, Luke.
Right on
Oh.
time.
Right on
nice.
time.
They have money.
So, anything else?
They have money.
They have money. It's a small town though.
Oh, there's a ton of money.
Other than that, no
Trip sampling?
crib sampling, but, I have not gotten my VRAP meter back from DES yet, so I don't know if that's, what that means. I feel like that's not a great sign.
We
or
own
my
that.
My YSI meter, sorry. I
Do we-
dropped it off when we dropped off the last round of samples,
Wow.
and I haven't yet heard back,
So do we own it? So we'd have to replace it if it,
We do own it. I don't think it's anything that's gonna be worth like having to replace it. I don't know. Basically what happened was the conductivity part of the meter stopped working after the first site that we were at. And it was just giving me 0 for everything. And I recalibrated it and I put it in the calibration solutions and tried it several times and still just kept saying 0, so.
you can,
So, it's definitely not right, but, hopefully they were able to tweak it. Sometimes, like we learned here, it just takes turning it off and turning it on, which I did not do because they say when you're doing testing to boot it up 15 minutes before you go out in the field. And I didn't wanna wait like another 15 minutes to have to.
so I apologize, I don't know how many things that particular meter reads, but you can get a conductivity pen, just a
Right.
pen for cheap, so.
So as long as and everything else seemed to be in good standing, so if it is a conductivity, you know, like you said, there's probably a easier, cheaper solution than having to replace the entire meter. And then we normally go out first Tuesdays of every month, so October, what's that, 6th? October 6th would probably be the next time we go out. It is a little weather dependent. Although we purposefully went out when it was raining last time, because the ones on Pogus Park Road are, there's 3 locations on Pogus Park Road that are on outfalls, and, they were all still dry, even though it was raining, so. Yeah.
Just been very dry.
Oh, it
Maybe
sure
in the
is.
springtime, when the snow melts.
Hopefully.
No, it's been very dry out in the woods. All the brooks are fairly dried up.
Very low.
There's not a lot of flow.
But that does remind me, so I'll reach out to Michelle and see what the deal is with our YSI meter and hopefully.
And the YSI meter from Winnisquam Watershed Network also had a problem.
Did you drop, so you forgot to hand that off to me? Do you need me to bring it down? Because if I'm gonna have to go get.
Right,
our
so,
meter.
so let me know when you're going down and I'll give it to
Okay.
you.
We'll
Thank you.
coordinate that.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
So is that your staff report? Okay, thank you. Okay, Luke, you're up.
Thank you for accommodating me with the schedule. I had another meeting, just got out of that, so appreciate that. This is a project that the water department is engaged in, and they are doing some infrastructure repairs on Clinton, Mechanic, and Prospect Streets. And on Clinton and Mechanic and Prospect, they are actually replacing some water mains. And they're doing this in conjunction with work that the Public Works Department is doing. So they're coordinating their efforts. They're only tearing up the road once. And
nice.
trying to keep that to get the biggest bang for the impacts that they're doing. But in this section where we're coming before you this evening, it's a cross-country run from the treatment plant at Stark Street, coming down slope to the southwest and crossing the old Burley Estate, which is now owned by Dan and Julianne Fallon, and then connecting to Clinton Street at Prospect Street, right at that intersection. That's an acute angle there. This portion is going to be not a replacement, but actually a construction of a redundant water main, a 20-inch redundant water main. There is one present, I believe it's 16-inch, but this will be a 20-inch redundant main, and that's to improve their network reliability against mechanical or hydraulic failure. It's a good waterworks practice to do, and it'll enable Ben Crawford to have better nights of sleep, knowing that if he's got a backup. Ashley assisted me with the wetlands mapping on this as part of her apprenticeship program, and I drafted up a report and was trying to highlight where the most feasible place to cross would be. And there is a narrow spot, but we did mention that if they could negotiate an easement with the property owners, they could avoid a wetland impact completely. And they did that, but they will be in the wetland buffer. They cannot avoid that. So that is why we're here. They did make strong efforts to avoid a wetland impact, but it does mean a temporary wetland buffer impact. And I want to be clear, too, that the intent is not to plant this buffer impact area to enhance it as a buffer. Right now, it's lawn, and if you, I don't know if you have the wetland delineation report before you, but on the very last page of it, there's a figure 9, which is the delineation plan, and it shows the topo. It's LiDAR topo, but it shows the topo for the entire lot. And though the Fallons own about 10 acres, probably 95% of it is on 15% slopes or greater. Mm-hmm. So they have just a small area that they can enjoy as lawn, and this is where the part of it is where this water main will be going across, and they really didn't want to lose any more lawn, and that's what the water department was saying that they would try to achieve that as they were pursuing this permitting. So just wanted to be clear with that.
So,
Any questions?
yeah, the diagram we have,
Yes.
I don't understand it. I mean, I understand where the wetland buffer, the 50-foot
I don't see
wetland buffer.
streets, though.
What plan
Just
are you
right here.
looking at?
Right here.
Looking at the CDM Smith,
Yeah, that's the topo plan,
No, that's the only one we have, right? That's
the
the only-
wetland buffer. I do have a hard copy, I just didn't.
Oh, that's fine.
scan it.
Okay,
It's
that's,
not absolutely everything,
that's the
but-
erosion control
It's okay.
plan.
Okay.
So, at the last minute, I had asked CDM Smith to provide an erosion control plan because they didn't have one. But on that plan, you see the heavy dashed line, which is the flanking of the construction path with compost socks and hay bales. And I mentioned to them that they might want to consider the Yeah, no, they do have compost socks. Originally, they had silt fence, so compost socks, that's perfect. You see the 20-inch main? Dean,
Yep.
do you see that coming down the hill?
I do, right.
And so, most of that is upland, it's not in the wetland buffer. Then you see where it crosses into the buffer. And so they just have that double line, the 20-inch main. You can see a couple of angle points in it. And then just down slope of it is that compost sock line to protect the wetland edge.
So what's the dash line?
That's the compost socks.
Oh, okay. So where's you said this is a duplicate line, where's the existing
The
line?
existing line is shown, it's a much lighter line, it's a single line, and it would be just to the right if you're starting on the right side of the page. Thank you, Lisa, this is very helpful. But as you look at where the
that-
leader is for the 20-inch PVC C900
Yeah, okay,
water main,
yeah,
then
okay.
just below that, you can see a light line. That's the
That's the existing,
that's the 16-inch main, right?
okay.
It says www water on.
Yeah, I see, yeah, it's got W's. Yes, it has W's, that's right, Mike, thank you.
Oh,
So it becomes a shorter run for you?
It's a shorter run, and it keeps separation from the existing main, which they need to have at least 10 feet separation, preferably more. And that provides that. And it avoids another crossing. The present main does cross the wetland. This avoids that crossing.
Right?
Lucas, you want to use this one, so Lisa.
Yeah, thank you,
Well,
Lisa.
I looked at it before. Okay, thanks.
So,
Thank you.
So are they gonna take any trees down?
No, it's all lawn. Right now, it's all lawn in that spot. When they're on the hillside, yes, they will be taking trees down on the hillside, but on when they come out near the toe of slope and start
Right.
making the angle towards Clinton Street, there are no trees to cut, it's just lawn. Actually, does the commission have the picture of that lawn
no,
area?
but I do have the application, and we can pass it around.
Sure. It's just got one photo of the area showing what it looks like, but it's,
Which photo?
it's on the, I don't know, several pages into it.
Just the one of the lawn.
Yes.
So I have to get and pass it.
Thank you, Ashley.
So as the water main comes down from the right corner, and you have your silt sock line,
Mhm.
do we need more silt sock? Like that dotted line ends.
Thank
Do
you.
we need any more up the hill?
Oh, up the hill?
Because that's where they're gonna be cutting some trees, maybe?
Yes, they will, and they'll be excavating there too. And yes, that's a good point. They could bring that, Debbie, down further to the east, just to flank up that side a little bit. I think they were just trying to show it to the wetland buffer because that's the extent of your jurisdiction, but I don't think they meant that they would not have any erosion controls there. They just wanted to show what was going on within the buffer. They'll definitely have erosion controls throughout the whole extent of it.
Does a wetland have water in it now?
At that spot where it's shown, it's pretty much a narrow brook. maybe 2 feet wide.
Mm-hmm.
It was, actually, there was water in it, I think, when we were out there. It might be dry now, but at that time, there was a modest flow of water in it.
So this might be a good time to be doing this.
Dry time would be a great time for doing it, yeah. I'm not sure what their schedule is as far as breaking ground, but they may try to do part of it this fall.
Anybody have any other questions? Comments?
Looks like a good solution.
There wouldn't be much of a change from what's present now. It would pretty much be the same as a final dressing of replicating what's existing.
Okay. You want to make a motion?
Make a motion that we accept Luke's plan and support it as it is.
Second.
Okay, anybody have any additional questions or comments? Okay, all in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Okay,
Very good. Well, thank you very much.
thanks,
Thank you.
Luke.
Appreciate
Thank you,
it.
Luke.
And again, thank you for your accommodation here.
Nice to see you.
This is yours, Ashley?
Good to
Goes
see
with
you.
Okay.
Good to see you guys too. You take care.
You too.
Okay.
Okay, so we have, under old business, we have the application checklist, so anybody have any questions or comments?
Did you receive any more changes, Ashley?
No, I did not receive any other changes since the last meeting, although I did personally make another change on the topic of, construction and demolition debris.
Mhm.
Fill. So it's at the end on the last sheet. I did add a note or
Yep.
another item to locate temporary storage areas for any fill on the plans. Fill and construction materials should not be stored in wetland or wetland buffers.
Mhm.
Just another pain in my side that I do run into, so.
So, I have a question about construction debris. You know, sometimes companies will take brick and cinder blocks and concrete,
Concrete.
and they'll crush it up and make it into a fill material. Is that considered construction demolition debris?
Right, so that is now, it is going to be defined, I think, in our new reg, or the update. I believe it is, but it's asphalt, concrete, cement, and the way that DES has it right now, this is just my understanding, so don't quote me on it, it's that there are certain, areas where you don't need to necessarily dispose of it at an authorized facility, but, and if you are within the shoreline protection overlay district, if you're 250 feet from a protected water body, you are not allowed to bury and dispose of it per DES's hazardous waste regs. So we don't have anything as a city right now that explicitly says that people cannot crush up asphalt and bury it. near a wetland. And we don't have anything in our ordinance, and so that was part of adding the construction and demolition debris piece into the update that we talked about earlier.
I have a formatting, up at the top underneath on the right-hand side, Department of Planning and Zoning. It looks like you've got, sort of a typo there on your second phone number. You have a 7. I don't know if you meant to put some sort of other, something in there.
Right?
And then the other thing I'm sorry, can I go? Okay. So then the other thing, I don't know if this is protocol, I see you have a document number, so 13057 docs. I don't see anywhere on here and maybe, like, maybe putting the file name with a date or something, so it can be referenced, like, so often you'll look at something and say, well, how old is this? What is, we don't have access to your computer to see that file. I'm just wondering if on the bottom it could have either the file name with a date, or change the file name
Like
from
a footing that just says,
something that, yeah, because if we're presenting this to other people, like just kind of, just having a date or something to be able to reference when it was generated, who generated it or something.
I can do a date. I do refrain, I have seen older documentation and stuff that's popped up that my predecessor seemed to like copy and paste where it was stored in our files, which is like a folder within a folder within a folder within a folder within a folder.
Yeah.
And he copied and pasted the path in the foot, and I can't stand that personally because I just find it totally not helpful because our drive changes all the time.
Yeah.
Not all the time, but it changes enough that if
But-
I was to follow that path, I probably
wouldn't
wouldn't
get there.
find it.
Right.
Sure,
So I
but,
think, but a date makes sense to me, and I think if you said, reference the Laconia Conservation Checklist dated this, then that should get everyone where they need to,
Right.
now everyone knows they're looking up the
Well,
right thing.
but going back to a different point, when you came on, you're like, I have no idea, I don't know what that document, I have no idea. So I'm not saying even just the whole path, but if you have a file name that could be searched by somebody, when you get a terrific job that pays you millions of dollars and you say, sorry, Laconia, I can't turn this up. Somebody else doesn't have to reinvent it.
And did you say that the phone number's wrong?
You have a
It shows
formatting,
typo.
7 in front of
yeah,
603.
on the second phone number, you have a 7 there, I don't know what that is.
And
Right
you
at
have
the
Which
top.
says Department of Planning, Zoning and Code, 45 Beacon
the
Street.
very top.
First page.
Right here.
You also have a bracket in front of this first number
Mine
that's,
doesn't have that, I mean, I have a hard copy, so maybe
Oh.
that's why,
Oh, okay.
but
you can look at ours.
it's just weird that
It is weird.
let me grab my iPad.
Both of the numbers are a little weird.
Yeah.
Well, the 603, 527,
But there's-
1264.
There's a bracket missing.
Right,
It could
yeah.
just be the formatting of the PDF, like for some reason because it does, when it's printed, it doesn't. I'll look into that, because mine says the phone numbers and there's no
Extra.
added numbers, yeah. I'll make sure that looks right.
Okay, but I'm not done with the concrete crushed brick,
Oh, I'm
et
sorry.
cetera. I'm not done with that, because that is, if, for instance, I needed some fill for a place, and it was called some kind of blend. It was a blend, and it doesn't have, but my point is that if somebody comes to fill a hole within the Shoreland Protection Act, is that crushed material acceptable? And I think we ought to, I think we should say, no, it's not, because it has fines in it that are supposed to, when it gets wet, it gets hard. You know what I'm talking about, Mike?
No, and I'm really trying to get on board.
So it's crushed up material,
Yep.
it's, it can be brick, it's,
So they
Stone.
have other growth material into it?
it has fine material, so when you crush up cinder blocks,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
you get that fine material that's
The
like
cement
cement
dust.
dust. And when so it's good for filling holes that you don't want to reoccur, because, anyway, I think we need to, I don't know how to do this, I don't know, but we need to be specific about,
Where it goes.
yeah, bank blend is, I think is what
Oh,
it's called.
interesting.
Anyway, okay. So,
Mr. Chairman, I apologize if I interrupted you before, I
that's
didn't
okay,
realize.
that's all right.
Sorry.
Okay, so I think I beat that horse, so we can move on to,
Yeah, in the new, once it gets approved, ordinance, it gets a little more specific and says dumping or burial, construction and demolition debris such as waste concrete, cement, brick, asphalt, and other inert masonry materials. C and D debris is required to be disposed of at an authorized facility.
Yeah, because I know a spot in town that all of a sudden, and their excuse was, well, I couldn't say no. And it really is that type of stuff that Dean is discussing. It's crushed stone and debris from some sort of course you can say no. I wouldn't want it on my backyard.
well, so when I was doing my business, when we would take out an underground storage tank, that would be a perfect place to use this material. Because you take the tank out, now you got this hole, you don't want it to collapse, you put that in, get a little water on it, you're good to go.
And then
You grade
gets
it,
covered.
you grade it so it's flat,
Yeah.
yeah.
Put some soil on top of it, you've got grass.
Well, there,
Well, we don't have anything now, I mean, once this is
Okay.
approved, that'll help give it some teeth, because right now, the only thing, when someone dumps something of that sort, 250 feet from the water, I say, DES, please help me.
right.
And I have to document
Huh, interesting.
and file a report, so.
Okay. All right, so the checklist is still alive, and we're supposed to make comments on it?
That's up
Or-
to you, well,
I had one more.
depends on if everyone is where it's at.
Are you guys seeing anything that we don't usually ask for here, or that we usually ask for that isn't listed?
I was gonna say that if you are having a certified wetland scientist map out the wetlands and vernal pools, that maybe we should include a sentence saying they may be asked to present at our meeting.
I brought that same point up. And I think they don't need to have the person, well, my idea was they don't need to have the person come, the wetland scientist come in person, but if they are using a wetland scientist drawing to mark up, which has been done by other applicants, we've had other applicants that have done that, I think the certified wetland scientist needs to stamp that document saying that it is accurate and allow it, because, I could get a wetland scientist to stamp my drawing and then I can manipulate the drawing.
What, with the Sharpie?
What?
With a Sharpie?
Manipulate it?
Well,
with-
also, we might have questions on the
I,
report, and it may be helpful to have the person here, and that's most of the time we wouldn't need it, but.
What if I just add a sentence at the end of that and says, state, the CWS may be required to present before the commission
Perfect.
on behalf of the applicant.
Yep.
I'm trying to keep it.
Yep.
My goal is to make it so, I know it printed not properly, but I wanna have it, this is just a cover sheet and then this is front and back, so the
Right.
applicant can just
Yep.
take it and it's not like a book to them.
Yeah.
They might
So
read it,
hopefully I can
might just read it.
read it.
So what if we were to say that the commission may require the certified wetland scientist to speak directly to the commission?
Support or verify the information.
She
Yeah.
did,
I think we're saying the same thing.
Yeah,
think
yeah,
so.
yeah.
I know. That's because I was going in a different direction, and then I changed in the middle of the wetland, so, sorry.
do you want us to accept these? Do you want us to accept it as a document? Do we vote on it?
Well, I guess my question is this final, or are we gonna take another shot at it, and
We can always
Sure.
amend it at any time.
Sure.
what do you wanna do?
I'm sorry.
I'm in agreement. It's one of the things that can be amended. It's not.
Okay, okay. So then, let's put a date on it.
Not written in blood.
We need a date on it that says, this is,
And then what happens to it after this? Does it just get put in the books? Does it have to go for approval before city council, or does it just become,
I don't think that's necessary
just our
at this
so
point.
it's just our
I
checklist
just
that
think
we're
with
given
the
to
ink on
them?
it,
All right.
My understanding is that it could be potentially as simple as just updating right now, when someone has a wetland CUP, they get a slew of attachments that are, one of them is wetland questions, and they have to answer the questions, so I'm thinking of just adding a note on the questions that says, please, fill out the attached checklist, the Conservation Commission checklist, so directing them to this, and this would be provided as well, if they have, a wetland CUP. What I didn't want is for them to think that they need to bring 5, or actually 7 copies of all of the
Yeah.
things that this checklist asks for to our department, because then all the planning board members are going to get that, and it's
That's
gonna
a
be
lot.
things that they, we want it, but the
Yeah.
other boards probably don't, so don't worry about implementation, I'll work on that, but it's up to you, Dean, do you guys want to accept it or approve it with the change of adding the document date and a name, and with adding the additional sentence on needing a CWS may be required to present?
So moved.
I'll second
Can't
that.
motion, but-
Okay.
I know,
Okay.
I know, she can't motion it.
Okay, any more discussion? Comments? Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you, everybody who made contributions to this. Okay. So, did we do the rules and procedures?
Doesn't look like it.
No, this has been the.
I know, we keep
It's-
kicking it down the
Because
road.
it's so dry.
Hey,
Sorry.
it's a masterpiece.
Ah.
Okay?
Maybe.
Blood, sweat, and tears.
I saw it.
Rules
It
of
is dry.
administrative,
It's,
It's making us toe the line, we don't like that.
we just keep, you guys just keep pushing it and pushing it, but, I mean, I have not received any sort of comments or changes or updates since like March, so I've made a few revisions since you've seen it, but
okay, so we left the size of the organization 7 regular members. Now, what that does is that means to have a quorum, we need 4 people. We gotta have at least 50% of the members here. So we need to have a quorum would be 4 people or more.
If it were a 5-member board,
Then we need 3.
you'd need 3. It's not unreasonable to consider a 5-member board.
I don't think it's unreasonable either, for
But, you
as long
know,
as I've been on it, because there have been a couple of times when we haven't been able to have meetings way back when.
Well, okay, so how many times, Ashley, we talked about this a long time ago. Do you recall how many times we did not have a quorum in the last year or whatever period of time you?
I'll have to go back through. In March, I probably would have been able to tell you, but
I would guess twice.
6 months later, it was mostly in the winter months. There was a series, kind of a back-to-back situation. I don't recall
Well-
of how many, but
This year, we've been lucky in some ways that Marnie hasn't been traveling as much, and I'm just saying, it's an odd year for us to base our attendance on.
Yeah.
So,
just so, we're all on the same page, because I have 2 changes that are new since this attachment, even though it's dated 9/3. Because Dean, like I said, he's doing something similar to Heritage Board, so. Under advisory members, I accidentally put this sentence at the end that says, they may participate in the meeting but cannot vote unless they are a sitting member. That sentence needs to go under alternates,
Alternate instead of advisory.
because advisory members don't vote. So
Okay.
that was meant to go
Oh, I
under
see what you're saying.
alternates, and then the other change was under section 5, which is meetings, under voting. The removal of the discussion on the item will need to continue at the next meeting. That last bit on that page, that is getting removed, because it's just as simple as, if there's a tie, the motion is defeated, and it's not going to be continued, because what happens if it is a tie again, and a tie again, and a tie again? It keeps getting continued for eternity. So, if it's a tie, motion is defeated.
Okay, so if we modify the number of members, then we have to change the size of the quorum under 5.2. Or the definition of a quorum.
You could still have alternates. An alternate would still have voting power if a regular member was not in attendance and they were a sitting member, so
Liaison doesn't vote, right?
liaison does not.
That's like an advisory.
and that's Stacy, right? Yep.
So it's up to you guys on, the number of members that you'd like to have, but, we have put out a PSA on, we have several boards that are looking for
Mhm.
members,
Always.
so,
Yeah.
yeah. So, still waiting to hear.
I think we need to do a commercial to let people know how exciting it is to be on the Conservation
Oh,
Commission.
aren't these meetings commercial enough? My goodness.
Can I film it slightly sideways, like when we did that video?
Yes.
On that bill? I was horrified afterwards. I was like, can I tilt this? I'm not good at video editing.
Dial it back.
It was just slightly crooked. Great video.
Looks
We
like
need
we
some-
were
But
on
you
the
had
wall.
it just slightly.
That's all right.
You had like a neck cramp. It was perfect.
We need some overlay music and some, yeah.
I could see value of, amending your, board membership to 5. I think just on participation that we're, seeing within the community, or lack thereof, I certainly, there's a lot of expertise here, and I certainly wouldn't wanna discount any of it, but in the new world order, maybe it would be easier if it was 5.
Well, and it doesn't mean that if you show up at the meeting and you're the 6th one, too
Yeah,
bad.
well, throw you out. That's
That's
not gonna
right.
happen.
That's right.
Yeah, I mean, I think moving to 5 would be good. I feel like I'm usually one of the people who doesn't get to make it. Like I was saying prior to the meeting, you know, I love being a part of the organization, but there's only so much time in the day, and
Mhm.
I would hate to be the reason why you couldn't have a meeting. So if you need an alternate,
Hey, easy boy. Don't be backing out so easy.
Okay, so what do we want to do? Do we want to change the definition of, essentially, definition of a quorum? Do we want to have
For the membership.
the membership be reduced to 5?
Nobody's put forth an argument that says we shouldn't, so.
Somebody want to make that motion?
Make that motion to, adjust our full-time membership to 5 and thus shift the identity of a quorum to 3 versus 5.
Second.
Okay.
Correction, the quorum is 4
Oh.
currently, with the 7.
Oh,
before.
okay, yeah, sorry.
But then Lisa seconded.
Right. Okay, so my only comment is that I think having more people on the commission gives us better decisions.
And I'm not, that's a valid point also. Certainly you wouldn't want to restrict it so that people who wanted to participate couldn't participate.
Right.
And we don't have a limit on the number of alternates we can have. If somebody,
No.
Right, but it says alternate members must be, maybe appointed as provided for in RSA.
they can
36.
I'm
Well,
sorry.
they'd have to go through the same process.
Right.
And you
Of,
can have up to 7 members, and that does include alternates, so,
Oh,
right, so you can't have like a limited alternates. I don't
You
believe-
can or cannot have.
I don't know.
Not, usually they're stated, usually, on the
okay.
site it says,
It's currently, is it currently 7? You can't, because if the board members, I'm just wondering, the numbers now get confusing me.
So it's 7 total, so if you have a 5-member board, you can have 2 alternates. So you'd have 5 members, 2 alternates, if, right now it's 7 members
With two
no-
with no
we
alternate.
don't- You guys do not have any alternates.
But we could have, if we, say we have 7 full members, could we still have alternates, 2 alternates?
My understanding is no, it's the.
7 is the number.
7 is the number max,
Gotcha.
is my understanding.
We don't have enough chairs.
They based it on the room.
the
Okay,
answer was so obvious.
yeah, so I agree with you, Mr. Chairman, that yes, the more people sitting at the table, the better the input, if you will, but we're not excluding people to give input.
How strict do we have to be with, like, advisory members? It says 1 of the planning board, 1 from city council. Could we have other advisors that come and don't vote?
And still have our 2 alternates?
My understanding is just each of those 2 boards, the city council or the planning board, one of the members can act on both boards, more so.
Well, what I'm saying-
In a
what I'm-
liaison setting and this board, because this is not
Excuse
their
me.
primary board, they act as a member on that board. They
Right.
come here to engage in the meeting and then report back to that board about what's going on and.
I think what I'm asking is if we have somebody that's interested, but not technically an alternate or an advisor, as it's explained here, more, I mean, so I guess
Then they would.
they're
want-
open to the public, so anybody could come.
Anybody could
Because
come, but
some
they-
of us started that way.
you did.
Just- I used to come and just come for the information and I didn't vote. Do you guys remember that?
I do.
I don't because I came afterwards.
Yeah.
And it was the same thing. I was interested in what was going on. I
I
didn't,
think it was 6 months before I applied to be a member.
So to answer your question, they would not be considered an advisory member because being an advisory member is being part of those, one of those 2 boards. But they could participate as a public member and potentially, if they did have an interest, be an alternate or member if there was vacancy.
Oh, I have another question. So if we make a motion on these tonight and say they're approved, is this another type of document we can go back and change it? Or is it on a timeline, you can only change it every January
more
or something?
stable.
This is amendable, my understanding, and I will double check with Dean, it doesn't need to go to anyone higher than this board. So this is your guys' rules of procedure, and you can amend it as you wish.
So if-
There's procedures for amending the document
Yeah.
in here.
Well, I just meant if we found something very uncomfortable, it kept coming, that we don't anticipate, when it's uncomfortable, that we can go back and change it without having to
Yeah.
wait, okay.
Yeah, it's amendable. So it's not like your hands are super tied, I guess. I mean, it's amendable in the moment too, I think. So if something, you came across something and then you guys could vote.
Okay, I have a question, and that is, if we go to 5 regular members, and 6 of us show up, do only 5 people get to vote?
Yeah, so
Yeah,
the sixth
interesting.
member, who is the alternate, can sit there and participate, but they cannot vote. They cannot
Okay.
make a motion or second or vote. No.
Okay, so my question is, okay, so, all right, so.
That's almost an argument for 7 full-time members again.
Wait, how
Because
do
you wouldn't want to come and sit here and not be able to participate, or,
Oh, you still could
But I think that-
you
participate.
can participate.
You can
you
still
give input,
participate, but you
can ask
cannot
questions.
vote.
You
Right.
just, your vote doesn't count.
There are
You
some
just
weird
can't make
people
a
that do
motion or second it, or you say all in favor, technically if you're an alternate and you're acting as an alternate because the board is full, so you're not a sitting member, then you're not
Right,
included in that vote.
Or you can vote,
But you
but
can
actually just record it.
Except for,
Right.
now
You
you,
can
now you
participate.
guys got
You
me
just-
all
you get to
You
confused.
don't,
use
you
it.
don't come to the meeting and sit in silence if you're an alternate. You come and you participate, you just cannot vote.
Okay, we have one other thing that is more important, or more time-sensitive than this is.
All right.
So
Seems like
if-
everybody's in.
if we want to change it to 5, if that's the motion that's on the floor, right? Change it to 5,
right.
okay.
I have it that Mike motioned to change it to 5 and Lisa seconded.
Right, okay,
There's been some discussion.
okay. So all in favor of the motion on the floor, change it to 5, say aye.
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 Opposed? Okay. All right, good, thank you. Okay, we have a piece of property that is being developed that is, well, they're in violation of the Shoreland Protection Act, in that they have cut trees within 250 feet of Lake Winnisquam. And so they're in violation of the city shoreline protection regulation.
Are they also in violation of DES?
Well,
So,
And where is this?
I don't think it's on the agenda.
No, it is not on the agenda. It came to our
Right.
attention late, or early this week, sorry.
Other business.
Maybe late last week. So, this is 2 lots, and they are planning to merge the 2. They have an existing residence, and they have these plans down there. One of them's existing and one of them's proposed, but they did file, basically they are rebuilding the footprint of part of the existing residence within the 50-foot setback in the shoreline protection overlay district, and then adding an addition onto the house outside of that 50-foot buffer. From a zoning standpoint, in terms of impervious surface and everything, they are okay, because they're in that footprint that's existing.
Show Mike too.
The thing that was
Show
missed
Mike, too.
was that
Because
on their plans that are approved by DES,
There you go.
they did conduct some cutting within the 0 to 50 feet from the lake. On the plans where it says proposed, and this is where it gets cloudy, it says no trees are to be removed for this project, and then it goes on to the 0 to 50-foot waterfront buffer. And then on the plans, it does show them in a different color from the other trees, a yellow color instead of green, kind of implying that they were always indicated to be removed, but then the note says they weren't. Anyways, the plans were approved by DES. I don't know what DES's interpretations are, that they were or were not being removed. Regardless,
Interesting.
they were removed. We've been to the site, or have seen the site from the public right away. And you can see the row of hemlocks, or the stumps of the hemlocks that were cut. There were, and from counting on the plans, 12 trees within the 0 to 50 feet that were cut. So that is within our protected shoreline protection overlay district. At this point, in talking with Dean, we want to bring it before the commission and see what the commission wants to do. They do have an extensive planting plan of perennials and shrubs that they're going to be putting in around this residence, but, you know, is it?
Enough?
They also removed 12 trees that were mature trees, so we wanted to bring it before your attention.
1, 2.
Technically, this would have required a conditional use permit to remove these trees within the 0 to 50 feet. So does the commission want to request that the applicant gets an after-the-fact CUP for removal of the trees, or perhaps
Recommend they replace in kind.
restoration?
Recommend they replace in kind.
So this lot line that they're abandoning here, down to these gold trees, hemlock, eastern. Is that the stuff that's not there anymore? It comes
Right.
out to about 12, everything in
Yep.
gold is
There's
gone.
There's a little row, there's a row of
Yep.
hemlocks, and then there's a cluster of about 3
Yeah.
trees right here, and then there's 1, 2. So from what I can see on the plans, I can't verify, I have not verified this, walking on the property, it's an active site, so.
Make them leave the stumps in.
I have,
That'll,
Well, it's
I have
part
not,
of it.
I have not worked
Yeah.
with these landowners personally, but, the zoning tech has, and she said that they, are quite
They're on my street.
reasonable and amenable to things. They perhaps cut it without knowing, I don't know, but on
They
the
could've.
plan,
No.
there's no way that
Yeah,
you
it's
could have
right there.
put this, I mean, it's literally right where the path was, so perhaps,
So, my question, there's already 2 residences on this,
right,
and they want it to be one big lot?
they're going to merge the 2 lots. This is staying and nothing's changing. This is being reconstructed, and then they're adding an addition, and that addition is outside of this 50-foot shoreline setback.
There's 2 lines here for shoreline,
That's
oh, that's
because
20
they
foot.
added, yeah.
Now it's 50.
So
Alright.
this further out 50 foot is what we're looking at. That's what the tree ordinance under SPOD regulates, and any impervious surface. So they didn't increase any impervious surface within that 50 feet. The footprint of that building that they're reconstructing is the same kind. But the trees,
So DES approved it, and they're not gonna go back on their approval, and you're just saying, kind of, do we help them make it all right by having an after-the-fact conditional use permit? I mean, there's no, because they're not gonna get fined
Well,
for
we
this
don't
or
know if
anything.
DES approved that.
I thought she said they approved the plan.
the permit is approved. I don't know
permit,
what their interpretation is. I'm not gonna speak on behalf
Right.
of them, but
think
because
it was-
I personally was a little confused
this
that
drawing
it
is
says in
different
the
than
note
that
that there wouldn't be cutting,
So,
in that, in red,
you know,
and
when
then,
it's,
So that's,
the plan is approved by DES. That's
Yeah.
what I do know. I don't know what their interpretation is.
okay, I have a suggestion.
Yeah,
I have a suggestion. I suggest that we file a complaint with the DES and have them come and check to see if they cut according to the DES permit. And then the other thing that we do is we require them to do a CUP and come and explain to us what they're going to do in terms of plantings. Certainly, they're not gonna plant the same size trees. That would be, that would be an unrealistic
Yeah.
Gargantuan.
However, I think, I think that people, and I don't know these people, but it could be that a mistake was made when the cutting was done. It could be that, it's, anyway. So I think what we do is we ask them to come in and have them fill out a CUP,
Give
file,
us their proposal and what they've been doing, what they've been up to.
and file a complaint with DES, to have DES come out and check and see if they followed according to the DES approved plan.
I think before I file the formal complaint with J. Avi, I do wanna just see if I can contact someone at DES and see what their interpretation was before I take that next step. The complaint division is incredibly overwhelmed to the point where the website says, do not contact us.
Oh, God.
Only like every 20 to 30 days. And I'll tell you, I'm over my 20 to 30 days. So,
Welcome to Laconia.
but I'd like to know their interpretation, and
Sure.
however I get that, if it's not easy to find that way, I mean, we could take
Okay,
the
so-
complaint
So,
route, but if there's no sense in filing a complaint, is what I'm saying, if they say,
If
oh
they-
yeah, we knew those trees were coming down.
No,
Then
but
they're
that-
not gonna do anything about it.
but that's not the point I'm trying to make. The point I'm trying to make is they have cut down some trees that were not supposed to be cut down. We know that.
And they
Well,
said
Did they
on the
cut
plan
down?
that they weren't gonna be cut down.
Right, but did they follow the plan and only cut down those whatever, I don't know how many trees they were allowed to cut down? But, if you're gonna have a guy in cutting trees, you do them all at one time. You don't say, come and cut 3 days, 3 today, and, they may, anyway, so.
I don't know that that DES's interpretation of those plans is what our interpretation right now is, that those trees are being removed. Because they might have thought that all along based on the coloring. They did change the color coding on that map, on the proposed. And if you look at the walkways, the tree is in the walkway.
Yeah,
So it's pretty clear that it would have come down, and I think that they potentially approved it knowing that, so that's why I'm saying a complaint right now, I just wanna get the conversation started.
sure.
And then if it's a complaint, it's a complaint, but we can still, at that same time as working with them, move towards asking the applicant to get a CUP.
I think we want the applicant to have a CUP.
I feel like we need all the information before we make a decision on this.
Okay,
Because it seems like we don't really know what was intended, what was supposed to be, what was been approved, what hasn't been. And we're
Okay.
trying to make
So
a
at
decision
least-
when we don't know.
So, do we have enough on the books so it's a violation here in Laconia, or we can get a presentation for us? How come this wasn't presented
Right,
going into it if it had that much impact?
right.
We don't usually weigh on it,
That's my question.
every,
How come we didn't see
everything
this
from the
before?
state, but that's significant,
But we usually would see something like this,
yeah.
or
So-
sign it or something.
Right, so because the impervious surface
Didn't
didn't
change.
change in that 50 feet, and the cutting plan wasn't
Clear.
jump out, these trees are coming down in 50 feet. If it was very obvious, it would have gotten caught, because typically the building permits go to zoning. And zoning knows if there's impervious surface is always the really easy, like, okay, you're in that 50-foot setback. But
okay,
from what we saw looking at the plans initially, it was permeable walkways and
Yeah.
rebuilding in the existing footprint and some landscaping. So it wasn't,
So what does it look like now? Have you been able to walk on the property?
I have not walked on the property, but you can see the trees, that row of hemlocks was removed.
Okay, my feeling is that if an applicant comes in and does not clearly communicate what they're going to do, that's not my fault. That's their fault. It's my fault because I thought I understood, but I didn't understand. So if the applicant followed the plan, that's that. So maybe the way to do it is to get Ames to come and look at what was done and write us a report that says what was done is consistent with the plan that was submitted to the city and the plan that was submitted to DES.
If she talks to DES, she'll find that out.
Yeah, I mean, you wanted to call Jay, right? You said you're over your limit, but you wanted to talk to
I
Jay.
want to avoid contacting the complaint department.
Right.
And talking with
Okay.
Jay
All right.
because he's extremely overwhelmed. So I'd like to just get clarification on their interpretation, regardless of whatever their interpretation is. I want to focus on the city level, because
Yeah.
what they
Right.
did would have required a conditional use permit.
Right.
Right.
So,
And whether it was, because it was missed at that earlier stage, does the commission want to require a conditional use permit after the fact? And what sort of things do they want to see? Or is it as simple as, can this be resolved without asking them for a conditional use permit? And potentially they can do plantings and submit something separately without going through this, and then planning board, and then,
so what they tell you about their interpretation is going to determine what we do. Is that what you're saying?
no.
Okay.
Because
Regardless.
I think they
Regardless.
clarify it, but at the same time, they would have needed a CUP regardless of whatever DES
Okay.
Because
does.
what
The
is the-
plans are, the important thing is to know that DES approved the plans. I don't know
Right.
what their interpretation is. Our interpretation is right now that they cut in 50 feet, they would have needed a CUP, they don't have a CUP.
So let's,
What do we wanna do?
So
that's
what
what
is
we
the
would do.
planning board gonna say?
Yeah, good question.
I can't speak for the planning board.
I mean, they might want a CUP too.
Has the planning board already approved this?
No, they do not have a CUP. All they would have needed was the building permit.
okay, so,
which has
Even with
been
the,
approved.
even with the merging of the lots,
They'll need to go to zoning.
but they're already in motion, they're already building and doing?
Whoa.
They own both the lots.
Doesn't it have to get approved that they merge it somewhere?
Yes, it will. It'll have to go to zoning for lot merger.
Yeah.
They put the cart before the horse.
That's right.
Yeah, they need,
that's right. So yes, we want a
They need to
CUP.
apply.
Yeah, why not? At this point, if you're just gonna be that way, it's as bad as my neighbors up on the roller coaster laying in
Yeah.
400,000 yards of 6-inch crushed rock.
yeah.
Oh, I need a permit for that? I'm sorry, 1,500 feet. What's that between friends?
I also think maybe in the future that if anybody's doing any building on the lakes or near wetlands, that we hear about it here.
I mean,
mean,
we do, and typically the building permits,
I know we
I don't
typically do,
see
but
every single thing, cause
Right.
I'm not in code.
Right,
But the building permits are reviewed. And
Yeah.
Karen sees them and the ones on the shorefront.
but I mean, as we talk about climate change and lake frontage changing and water
Water.
drying and everything else, it's gonna be more and more important for people to understand what they're doing on their lakefront, you know, and how it's gonna complicate things.
Or how it's going to destroy the environment.
Well, the other thing that is that the Winnisquam Watershed Network is doing a watershed management plan, and this, part of the plan is to survey from the water what the properties look like from the water, like, is there erosion? Is there natural vegetation as a buffer? You know, what is it? And so now that was done, and this work was done after that, and so it's, anyway.
How about, I don't know if this is gonna be stringent enough for this, but my thinking is that a CUP is just going to require them certain conditions, right? To do X, Y, and Z plantings. Or how do you make it right that they
Right.
remove these trees? The
Is there a-
trees cannot go back regardless.
Is there a fee to file CUP?
Yes, but it's,
150?
yeah, like 150, I don't know the amount right off the top of my head.
It's,
So there would be an associated fee. My thinking is that it'd be faster to contact them directly and get a resolution and say, we know you did this, we would like additional plantings and to have a full landscaping plan set before us.
sure,
Do
maybe.
you want it to go through the CUP process and get approved, or is it enough that the city is working directly with them and that I bring that plan to you guys and you approve it, or?
What if we were to ask them to do the plan, like you said, and come to a meeting and explain to us what they're doing? And
I would caution against just working with the landowner, because then you don't have anything that's set, that's like officially in writing, and then they, this way you're setting a precedent of how you handled it, that way somebody can't come back to you and say, oh, well, this guy you just worked with him and you didn't make me have to do that, and yet, so, you should be consistent, make them come to hear,
They
because.
should have had a CUP, they should have a CUP. That's my opinion.
And
I mean, in terms of the additional cost to them to do a CUP, I don't think a CUP costs a lot of money to do. I did my own when I did it. So,
So I'm going to have to reach out to them. Do we have recommendations that, for things that you want to see as restoration or
Restitution.
restitution is closer.
Right, for what's been done, so that way I can say, hey, this happened. It's been noticed, the Concom knows, maybe would like you to file CUP after the fact, and please consider or add, because like,
Well,
so,
I'm sorry, Dean.
go
I was, go ahead.
I was just gonna say that, if we ask them, come to a meeting with a landscape plan, a detailed landscape plan, a detailed plan that says, this is what was approved by the DES, this is what we did.
Sure, at least an explanation.
Right.
Then you'd be able to say, well, isn't that a little bit out over the edge? Couldn't, then make a decision, do you need the CUP? You're not gonna get them to replant the trees.
No.
You could get them to,
And by that time, Ashley,
you can't extort them, go ahead, give us a donation to the old Conservation Commission. You can't extort them,
No, you wouldn't do that.
but you have to, there should be a check there. They should have to answer for just coming in and working within the shoreline protection lines.
I mean, what's the point of it if
Yeah, if you don't
it's not
follow the rules.
enforced?
and by that time, will you have gone onto the property, Ashley? Will you have done the site visit, or is there some process that we need to go through to generate you being able to do a site visit?
no, there's nothing that you guys need to do to make me do that.
Well, I'm just saying, you said you hadn't really seen whether, so, that way, that would give us some additional guidance.
Yeah, I think that if the property owner would give you and Dean permission, not me, Dean, Big Dean, permission to go on the property and explain what was done.
Then
then-
you'd have a thorough
Then based
understanding.
on what they did versus what DES permit said they could do, then we would get to the next decision, which is, you need to go before the Conservation Commission and explain what you did, why you did it, and what you're gonna do for plantings. Because if they did this, if they cut in the shoreline protection.
So again, it doesn't matter that DES approved it because it was within our 50-foot setback as well.
Right.
Against the ordinance. So although
If
they,
you-
they may have cut to DES plan, that might have been the plan all along.
Mm-hmm.
Right. If you
But
check with
it
them,
wasn't-
yeah,
They did not get a CUP, so.
right.
Right.
DES may have some suggestions for you too,
Yep,
because I'm
Right.
sure this happens all the time. And they probably get calls from towns that say, hey, you know, did you say they could cut 20 trees off the front of their property? And if they, you know, I'm sure they have experience with issues like that.
I think if we better understood what happened, then, you know, that would be information we would need to have as a commission.
sure.
Because right now, we're looking at two plans that are, one says no trees are to be removed in red, and what appears to have taken place is not consistent with item number 5. No trees are to be
I
removed.
think the clarification is necessary, but I think we also need to focus on the fact that they did cut within the 50-foot setback. So
Right,
So,
whether or not it
And I
was the
agree.
plan.
Yeah, if they need a CUP, they need a CUP.
so have the plans for their new house gone through the planning board?
It wouldn't need to, it's a single-family residence, and it's not, it's within its setbacks.
So
And it's a
they've
remodel, it's
also,
not a
besides
brand
cutting
new.
trees, they've been blasting rock away for months,
Who?
right? Is that the same
Mm-mm.
place?
No.
Oh, never mind.
That's
they have
that's
a
a
place?
different, that's a
That's a
different
different
horse.
story.
that's a different horse.
Sorry, because that would be changing the topography of the land if you didn't have a permit for that.
Yeah.
Okay, never mind. I thought it was the same place.
No,
Is this the same road?
just obstreperous.
Is it the same road?
Yeah. Yeah, that's the thing, you know, that, anyway.
Late now.
How much further down?
Okay,
Um,
it's after 8.
Yep.
Yep.
All right,
We need a motion for this?
Yeah, I need to know what you guys want to do.
I think,
We're required.
Take them out and shoot them.
Wow.
On the record, Marnie.
I know.
boy,
Wow.
wow, here you go, kid, you had such a good run too.
Go ahead.
I would think that you'd be well within your bounds to speak to your contact at DES, see what the interpretation was. At the same time, and it's funny because I'm not seeing this anywhere else, you know, something like that I would thought I would have seen somewhere else. But, an explanation, or get access to the property and, have an explanation if they don't have anything appear in front of us.
Oh,
No?
I think having Ashley get some clarification on the interpretation, and then asking them to start the whatever, CUP after the fact. I think they need to go that route.
I agree.
I'll second Lisa's motion.
Sure.
Okay,
I
any
think
more,
it's a good idea.
any more discussion?
Nope.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
I-
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay,
Next meeting,
I was gonna say.
next meeting is the,
October 6th? Yes.
well, the next meeting, I think, is supposed to be the end of this month if we go every 2 weeks, right?
No, because we
No,
have,
we already decided this. We already decided this earlier about meeting the same night, and we're meeting in room 200.
That's November.
Oh,
Yeah, our next meeting is
This is the-
October
Not-
7th.
2 weeks from today is the
30th.
30th of September.
Yeah,
But
and
we-
the next meeting is scheduled, because I post the yearly, schedule, it's scheduled for October 7th.
Okay.
Okay.
The
okay,
next meeting is October 7th.
thank you. Good night.
Okay.
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
All in
Aye.
favor?
Wait a minute, do anybody want to discuss this? Okay, thank you, have a good night. So one thing I would like everybody to think about